Let's talk about plant diversity. The first major group we will look at are the bryophytes. Bryophytes are the most primitive terrestrial plants, evolving 420 million years ago. They comprise of mosses and liverworts. Mosses have distinct leaf-like structures and have simple root-like structures called rhizoids. They have no vascular tissue as the entire plant absorbs water. However, without vascular tissue to support the plant, the size of mosses are small. They reproduce using spores. Bryophyte spores only germinate and grow into a new plant if they land in a moist place, as the male gametes need to swim in moisture to get to the female eggs. Bryophytes live in wet, shady places because they are reliant on water for reproduction. The next group that evolved were the pteridophytes, which are essentially ferns and horsetails. They reproduce by means of spores located on the underside of their leaves in small spots called sori, which fall on the wet ground and germinate. The pteridophytes were the first plants to develop vascular tissue for conducting water and sugars around the plant. Ferns have true leaves called fronds and true roots. Gymnosperms evolved around 300 million years ago. They, like pteridophytes, have vascular tissue, true leaves and roots. Gymnosperms also developed support tissue between vascular tissues to strengthen the plant, which allow it to grow taller and wider. However, the evolution of gymnosperms brought a new method of plant reproduction: seeds. Gymnosperms have special structures called cones, which contain the gametes. This adaptation allows gymnosperms to reproduce independently from water. Angiosperms, or flowering plants, appeared 120 to 200 million years ago. Like gymnosperms, they are seed-bearing plants with true leaves, vascular tissues, and well-developed roots, and do not rely on water for reproduction. They differ from gymnosperms in that their reproductive structures are enclosed in flowers. Each flower has male and female organs. Angiosperms are the only plant groups to produce fruit, which we will look at later. As we see the evolution of plants, a number of trends are apparent. All terrestrial plants arise from green algae, which was heavily dependent on water. Plants show less reliance on water for reproductions, as they have evolved due to the evolution of methods of reproduction. We also see the plants are able to grow larger and stronger after the evolution of vascular tissue. We will now look at the two methods of reproduction in plants. Asexual reproduction means reproduction without using male and female gametes. It only involves the process of splitting, which is called vegetative reproduction, where a part of the plant grows into a new plant. Thus, the offspring are genetically identical to the parent plant. The advantages of asexual reproduction include reproduction happening over a very short space of time. If individual cells are well suited to the current environment, so will the offspring. The disadvantages of asexual include all offspring being identical to the parent, so all individuals suffer from unfavorable or changing conditions and diseases. The second method of reproduction is sexual reproduction. It involves the joining of a male and female gamete to produce the next generation of plants. Sexual reproduction occurs in all four of the previously discussed groups of plants. Advantages of sexual reproduction include increased variation among offspring due to a combination of genetic material from both parent gametes, which means that plant populations are able to adapt to changed environments, conditions, and disease. The disadvantages of sexual reproduction include the increased length of time it takes to become an adult compared to asexual reproducer. Variation also means that some plants are inferior, but these plants mostly die before they reproduce. In mosses and ferns, sexual reproduction can only take place near water, as discussed earlier. In angiosperms, the flower is the reproductive organ where sexual reproduction takes place. The flower can be divided into four parts. The outer part of the plant is made up of sepals, which are green structures which protect the young plant. The petals, which are often brightly colored, attract pollinators. Thirdly, the stamens, which are the male part of the flower. This structure contains the filament, which supports the anther, which contains the male gametes in pollen grains. The final part of the flower is the carpel, which comprises the stigma, the part of the plant which receives pollen grains. the style which supports the stigma, the ovary which contains the ovules, which contain the female gametes. Once fertilized, the ovule becomes the seeds and the ovary becomes the fruit. For sexual reproduction to be successful, pollen containing the male gametes must be transferred from the anthers to the stigma, which contain the female gamete. Transfer of pollen from the anther of one plant to the stigma of another plant is called cross-pollination, while if the pollen is transported to the stigma of the same plant, it is called self-pollination. Because plants cannot move, they rely on agents called vectors to transport pollen. For example, restios rely on wind to transport. Stems of the restios are flexible and easily moved by the wind. The pollen grains are small and easily transported to other restios. Most plants are adapted to pollination by insects. Plants such as the agapanthus are brightly colored and have an attractive scent. Their pollen adheres to bees and are transported from plant to plant as the bee moves around. Larder plants with woodier stems are pollinated by birds. These plants include the strelitzia and the protea.